Hey, this is Paul with Make Use Of, and I recently moved, which is why everything looks completely different and also really bland. With moving, typically comes dirty floors, a lot of movers, dirt, grime, dust, you name it. And it's actually given us a good opportunity to test out the Dreame Tech DreameBot L10 Pro, which is a super awesome smart robot vacuum that also has the feature of mopping as well. If you're like me and you're interested in keeping your floors regularly cleaned, but you don't have the motivation or the time to do so, something like this robot vacuum can be very handy. This has a lot of smart features and updates over previous models, and we've been testing this over the past couple weeks since our recent move in our new house, so we'll be telling you how well it performed for a variety of floors and surfaces. Prior to getting this, I've actually had a number of other robot vacuums. In fact, I also had a previous one of the earlier models made by Xiaomi, which I believe is the parent company for Dreame Tech. That one did pretty well in terms of cleaning, but it turned out it was a bit more trouble than it was worth, and I'll go into that in just a bit, comparing it to this. With the L10 Pro's all black glossy finish and relatively small footprint, it can fit into a lot of spaces without becoming an eyesore. If you're someone who doesn't actually like using the smartphone app and you don't need the additional smart features that this offers, it's pretty much plug and play. You can take the dock and the vacuum and set it in any corner of your room or really anywhere. And you just have to hit the power button and it's going to go ahead and scan the room and then do its cleaning.
The robot is starting the cleanup.
It's going to say it doesn't recognize the area.
Positioning, please wait.
It doesn't recognize the position.
Positioning failed and the map is not working. The robot will start a new cleanup. The robot is starting the mopping. Positioning, please wait.
When you place the dock in any part of the room, so long as you keep it there, it's actually going to remember the map that it created for that space, and so next time it goes ahead and does its cleaning cycle, it knows the best path and most efficient way to clean that area. Keep in mind, however, even the slightest changes in terms of the placement of the dock itself or any other larger objects in that space can confuse it and make it think that it needs to do an entirely new map for that area. For those who want to get the most out of this, connecting this to your Wi-Fi using the including instructions as well as to your smartphone app allows you to set your cleaning schedule and times, as well as changing the suction power, or if you want, you can actually set those virtual boundaries and zones to clean as well. Another cool feature, and this is something you actually need to enable in your smartphone app first, is if it detects that it's come from a wood or other smooth surface and it's now on carpet, it will actually automatically increase its suction to the max power in order to get a deeper clean on those carpets. And so that's just another way that if you do a few little tweaks in the app before you let it run, you actually don't need to do very much else in terms of automating this to run on its own. And while their official page only mentions Alexa support, it does actually work pretty well with Google Home integration when you use that Mi Home app. And with that, one of the main things we do is, for example, if we don't want the vacuum to run and it's part of its regular schedule, as soon as it starts, all we have to do is say the hot phrase. You're able to actually tell it to stop or start the vacuum, or if it's in the middle of the room and you just want it to return to the dock, you can go ahead and tell it to do so as well. And of course, while this won't be replacing a dedicated vacuum, when you run it on a regular schedule, it does help you minimize and reduce the amount of deeper cleans that you would have to do with those larger handheld vacuums. We've been running this about 3 times a week with the vacuum function and switching on the mopping function about once every other week. We found that works best for one floor, and while you do have the option to actually move this between other floors, physically taking it up and moving it to other floors, I recommend putting this on your main primary floor, whether that's your living room or one of the floors that has all your bedrooms, anywhere that gets a lot of high traffic so you get the most value out of it. In terms of specs on this max suction, it's rated for 4,000 PA, which is going to be more than enough for most cleans. In fact, it's actually pretty impressive even by handheld vacuum standards. Battery life on its lowest setting is up to 150 minutes, and that should be enough for most households, depending on the size of your house. For larger homes or cleaning cycles that require more time, the option is available in the app that it can actually dock, recharge, and when it's done, it can continue the cleaning cycle. With its 570 milliliter waste bin, we've been changing it out once, maybe every 2 weeks. It's plenty large to collect all the garbage, and we don't have to worry about it too often. The mop tank is a little smaller at 270 milliliters, so that's good for about 2 runs before you have to refill the water out. What really makes this smart is the lidar system on the top, and that is what enables it to maneuver around obstacles. It actually allows it to see further out and determine kind of the best path to take, as well as determining if there's any kind of object or obstruction in the way that it should avoid. Also, if you have stairs, it's going to keep it from barreling downwards. It's actually pretty smart. It can actually get up to the edges of the staircase, vacuum all around it, and never at one point did it seem like it was going to tip or anything. Our previous model, even though it had lidar, struggled with edges and staircases and frequently actually found itself tipping over or nearly tipping over to the point where it couldn't continue to clean. The L10 has improved a lot over those previous models because it actually can detect and come closer to objects without even having to tap or touch them at all. This really helps keep your home, walls, and your objects more damage free compared to those older models. Of course, one of the other advantages and new features that this L10 model offers in comparison to older models and a lot of other competing vacuums is the fact that it has a mopping functionality built into it. It's really simple to set up. All you have to do is fill the mini mop tank with water and make sure you don't put anything else in there. You rinse, wring out, and then reattach the mop pad. Then you just slide the entire module underneath the vacuum and click it into place.
The water compartment has been installed.
The vacuum will automatically detect that you've slid it underneath it, and it will actually give you a little chime saying that it's ready to mop. Again, this is another great area where if you don't want to pull out your smartphone or ever connect it to your smartphone, it'll automatically detect that mop has been attached and it'll automatically run in the mopping cycle. However, with that, if you want to change the water flow, you will need to make those changes in the app. Sticking with the default flow though worked really well for me and my floors. Being that they're wood, I didn't want to get them too wet, but just damp enough that it allowed it to clean up those muddier parts of the floor. At first, I was actually kind of skeptical before trying it out, but on our wood floors, it actually did a pretty good job. It has some additional smart features that allow you to limit yourself to what zones you actually want to use the mop to. And so, for example, if on the same level of your home you have both wood floors as well as carpeting, you can actually set a virtual boundary to prevent it from mopping on your carpets. What would be nice though is if it could automatically determine which floors should be mopped and which floors shouldn't. For example, if it knows that a room has carpeting, it should just know automatically to avoid going into that area without you having to set that virtual boundary in the app. Something that would even be cooler is if the mopping module could be retracted into the unit itself, allowing it to continue. Say for example, it mopped a wooden floor, it could then continue to the section with carpet, vacuum that without the mop actually getting onto the carpet, and do an entire cleaning cycle of the entire floor without having to switch out the different components. Likewise, another downside though is it doesn't seem to have any kind of sensor in the tank itself letting it know that there's low water. It ran out one time without me knowing and tried to continue the cleaning cycle, although I noticed there's no water coming out, and sure enough I checked the tank, it was completely empty. It doesn't know that, and it doesn't give you any kind of notification. And so like I said, we recently moved, and especially during those first couple weeks, we had really dirty floors, which allowed me to really test out this Dreame bot and see how well it could clean up a variety of different messes on both carpet as well as my wood floors. In the first part of the test in the living room / kitchen area, which I had a variety of debris which ranged from larger pieces of plastic, tape, sand, mud, as well as finer dusts. I definitely thought those larger pieces of trash and plastic would be harder, if not impossible, for this to collect. So to my surprise, it was up to the challenge. Throughout that space, I also set up a bit of an obstacle course to see how well it kind of maneuvered around it, as well as to see if there was any kind of logic to the path it took between those spaces. I began with 2 rounds of vacuuming, and then I did 2 rounds of mopping. In its instructions, it does suggest sweeping 3 times before mopping with it, although I do think that's a little bit excessive and probably most people won't be following that. And so when it came to those efficiencies and mapping and finding the best route to clean, I noticed it actually did break the room into really logical zones. The only time I thought it was a little weird was when it was going between zone A to B, and there was some overlap between them where it seemed like it was cleaning that same area twice. But aside from that, it definitely did seem like it was tackling each zone individually and moving through them at an efficient pace. After it's done the initial mapping of your floor, you can actually check out the virtual floor plan that it creates for your area in the Mi Home app, and that's where you can then set your zones in the different rooms or virtual boundaries for it to clean or avoid. Even though it does have those front bumpers that help it detect when it's made contact with something, it hardly ever actually makes physical contact with something, which goes to show how improved that lidar system seems to have come. Even for tighter areas where it can't necessarily fit, like underneath certain pieces of furniture, legs of tables, it'll get very close to it and it'll do as much of a circumference around it that it can, but it won't actually try to budge or push against it and damage your furniture. The biggest reason I stopped letting my older vacuums run on an automatic cycle is because they would just get in so much trouble. They'd either bump into things, they'd damage stuff, or they'd get really lost and they couldn't actually complete the cycle on their own. while the DreamBot didn't have this issue, it did have one area which I wish it would avoid, which was the corner molding by my staircase. It would try to keep climbing above it, and I thought that wasn't very necessary. Like I said, it got all the big pieces of debris, even the ones that I thought it definitely wouldn't be able to. It handled really well. The combination of its strong brushes underneath as well as its side brush to help kind of actually bring things in from a corner into its main suction area, actually it's a great combination. With the exception of one little pasta elbow, it picked up all the noticeable debris that I had laid out or noticed on the floors before I set it out to clean the 2 different times. The only place I noticed that it actually kind of struggled and it would need more manual attention later on are usually in gaps and corners, usually where it kind of brings dust or debris up to, but because of the gap or corner, it can't actually get those areas very well. Something that isn't usually mentioned or talked about when reviewing robot vacuums is how quiet they are, even compared to this small handheld Shark, which has very little power in comparison to this. The L10 is actually far quieter. And so what's great is, even if you are in the same area where it's doing a cleaning cycle, it doesn't really disrupt the flow of whatever you're doing. You can actually easily tune it out if you want to. Whether you're having a conversation, you're watching TV, you don't have to yell, you don't have to turn up the TV. And it's pretty nice to know it can be on that routine schedule without messing up with your schedule. And similar to its setup, its actual maintenance and cleaning the device itself is also pretty simple as well. Compared to older models, it has a pair of comb teeth that help the buildup and tangling of hairs on its brush. But of course, like any other device, if you want this to run smoothly for as long as possible, regularly maintaining this as well as cleaning it, inspecting its brushes every now and then, is going to help this last for a lot longer. And so when it comes to cleaning automation, this ticks a lot of boxes and definitely makes the whole experience much more easy and, less manual. What's cool about this is it gets a lot right. It can actually clean your floors very well, and for the most part, it can do a lot of the heavy cleaning of your home without any input from you. It's only when you want to do those deeper cleans, get into those corners and areas that it tends to miss, that you'll need to pull up a vacuum and maybe spend a little bit of time, but nothing in comparison to doing an entire clean on your own. The mopping function does work very well. It does have a few areas where it could be a little bit more automated and smart, but I think it's a great step in the right direction. So thanks for checking out this video of the DreamBot L10 Pro. If you have any questions or you want to learn more about this vacuum, you can let us know in the comments down below and we'll try to help you out down there. Or if you have more specific questions, you can ask me directly on any of my socials. But until the next one, we'll catch you later.